I've got the right to buy a home, I've got the right to do this, the right to do that. And the answer is, well, your parents never had it, your grandparents never had it in the halcyon days of our great rise. So why do you think you've got the right? No, you've got to earn it. You've got to save for it. Now, the government's job is to not get in your way, is to ensure that you're saving for something that is affordable. Is it possible for house buying to be 3 or 4 times our country's wages or incomes? Yes, it is. But not because you drive house prices down. We've got to drive wages up. And I'm saying to my colleagues now, you don't get it. Drive the wages up. Cut the taxation of a business that are paying the wages and start focusing on not consumption, but wealth creation, and it'll work.
Welcome to Where's My Money? One man, $1 million of debt, one podcast to find a way out.
We are just under 12 months out from the next general election, which means the billboards, the sound bites, and the political chaos are going to start warming up very nicely. When it comes to political survivors, there's really only one name that comes to mind. Winston Raymond Peters has been part of New Zealand politics longer than most of us have been paying a mortgage. And somehow he's still out there asking the big questions, and probably a few no one else dares to. Today, I talked to Winston about money, poverty, power, and what really matters to the country that's trying to get ahead. This is Where's My Money?
Well, thank you for the chance to have this conversation. I've got no idea what it's going to be about, but we'll find out.
We'll find out. Look, I'm like I was telling you before we started recording, I'm not a journalist. I'm not here to gotcha. There's no traps here. I just wanted to have a really good chat about money in general because it's a hot topic in New Zealand at the moment. There's a lot of New Zealanders who are wondering where they went wrong and what they can do right. I thought we could start with how you grew up around money, because a lot of how good we are with money as adults comes from how we were raised around it. So, I mean, you were born in 1940. You're 80 years old, Winston. You look amazing. For someone who's an octogenarian, you look incredible. But I know that you grew up in, post-depression in Northland with 11, you're one of 11 children in your family. What was money like in that situation?
Well, what I'm about to say, of course, has not much connection with the modern day New Zealanders in terms of the bulk of the population. But my mother and father began their married life because of the enormous struggle during the Great Depression of the 1930s. But the Depression was not over in Northland until well into the 40s. And so when they were first married, they lived in a tent, and then that as time went by, as so many couples, they got some small little accommodation, a couple of rooms in an old mining hut that had been moved to the place. Strangely enough, that old mining hut I've still got, and it's my beach property, because I decided there was something worth preserving.
Absolutely.
The building is probably well over 100 years old, but it was worth preserving. And whilst my family was saying, why don't you burn it down and start something new? I thought, what, burn that down? That's such a critical part of my family's history, and I'm never going to do that. I'm going to keep it as a memory of the former times, I suppose, for the next generation going forward. But let me say the difference was then that people knew that if they worked hard and saved, tomorrow would be better. And with 11 children, obviously, you might think this is impossible. But we knew what poverty smelt, taste and felt like. But the critical thing was that some countries stay in that circumstance permanently, whereas we had rebuilt a great country out of the Great Depression. And the moral of the story is that those principles that got us there are not nostalgia. They're not old-fashioned. They're not outdated. They're as relevant now as they were then, and we can still be a great country, but we've got to do some of the priority things that we did back then. Guess what they were? They also united people as well. Well, number one thing was that they struggled and strove to have the capacity to buy your own home and pay for its insurance, pay for its mortgage, pay for the rates at 25% of your wage. And most incomes then were one earner, not mum and dad, but just dad. Sometimes mum, but far more rarely. So that was the first thing, property owning. And the second thing was hopefully not for yourself, but access to a decent health system should one of you get ill. And the third thing was they understood, most critically, to be a great country, we're going to have to ensure that there are escalators of education onto which any young person could step and go as far as they possibly could, just depending upon their efforts and their commitment to be educated properly. And the last thing was first world wages. Those four things, strangely enough, are nearly what all the world wants, but we've lost the plot in terms of focusing on those four things still. So that was the world I was brought up in. And, people, I know what prejudice smells and tastes like. I know what scoffing and economic hardship is like. But I suppose I was enormously fortunate to understand one thing. There are some parts to being poor, if handled right, are of great value.
You say you knew what poverty smelt and tasted and felt like. Did you know at that time that was what it was? Or is it kind of something that you look back on and say, well, that was poverty?
No, we knew what it was because, many of us were in the same circumstance. Family after family were in the same circumstances. It's how you handle it. And even now, if I look at it, a lot of people don't have a garden. They've got the land, they've got the area, they don't have a garden. They don't, how shall I say it, astutely buy. They spend an enormous amount of money, and a lot of the money is spent on waste, or worse still, on things that are not good for them. And we're never going to get on top of New Zealand's health problems when such a massive percentage of our health problems are not to do with the health system, but to do with the people in it who are coming as patients with conditions which on a good diet they would never have. What's my argument for that? Well, go and have a look at Japan. I used to say to these people who had all these radical ideas about why people are dying, how come the highest cigarette intake, tobacco intake country in the world by miles, Japan, is living longer than anybody else? So diet is more important. It critically is.
The same could be said for the Italians. They love olive oil and everything, red wine with everything. They live to 120, the nonnas and nonnos. They love it.
Well, you try and say to people, look, there is a significant change which dramatically would reduce the demand on our health system, but people will not take it. Now, our job, surely, is not to lecture people, not to proselytize and boast about it, but to say, look, there is a better way. And funny enough, there was a great Maori leader called Ngata who was saying it 110 years ago, that diet is important. He was saying it to his people. The first Maori Minister of Health ever was a man who was a young Maori doctor, and he brought modern medicine to the Maori people after the Spanish flu. Now, this was information that was available then, and we, as I say, are here in 2025, everybody's screaming about the health system failing. No, there are demands on our health system which are massively inflated by bad diet, bad habits. Now, alcohol is okay, but in moderation, and certain things are not bad for you, but it's also moderation. This is not, how shall I say it, a nostalgia matter. It is proven by international comparisons.
Where's My Money is sponsored by Enable Me. Figuring out financials can be daunting. Master your money and stop living paycheck to paycheck. Get practical tips and expert advice on budgeting, debt management, and savings with Enable Me, helping Kiwis get money fit. You're not just, people say that you're a career politician, and you've made that your, that's been your calling for a very long time, but you worked some pretty hard labour in Australia, didn't you? You know what hard work is like.
Oh, well, I'm off a dairy farm. I was up in the morning at 4:45 every morning, maybe earlier, and then did all that, go to school, and finish that, and go back to milk cows at night. And not on modern cow sheds, but cow sheds where the time took a whole lot longer. In big herds back then, the biggest herds in the Northern Wairoa and Hikurangi Dairy Company, where my family were on, because we were share milkers at the time, because our farm was too small. Yeah, I do know about that. And as for homework, you got no time to do homework when you're off the bus, straight into your gear, and you're in the cow shed. It's 7 days a week, so to speak. So yeah, I do, as I say, remember that. But the point was, we knew that tomorrow was going to be better.
Who taught you about money? Was it your parents? Was it that farming community? Was it
My mother in particular.
Yep.
My mother, of course, I'm sorry, my father's Maori, my mother's Scottish. As I say, we were born with two advantages, a natural suntan and a desire to save money. But my mother would work things out to the last cent. And we did all that from extraordinary, low incomes and extraordinary sacrifice. But she had an ambition. She's going to, because we were so far out in the country, she'd send the boys to one college and send the girls to another college. And so for nearly all the family, apart from bad farming years, the boys went to Wesley College and the girls went to Epsom Girls Grammar. Now, how can a family that poor do that? And the answer is by saving and putting aside money and keeping and counting every cent.
Did you maintain that ambition to save into your older years?
Yes, I did. But there's somewhere else in the middle, when the farming turned bad for a few years, we missed out in going to secondary school. And I went to 3 secondary schools as we were travelling around. Now, not many people went to 3 secondary schools, but I did. And as I say, some people say that's why he's got a chip on both of his shoulders, but it's not. It just makes you more determined to be successful.
Absolutely.
And I was the first one to graduate from university, even though I was the middle of my family. My family's got a stack of graduates since then, but in the middle, I was the first one to get a degree in my family, even though I had not wanted to private boarding school, and they had a far better primary secondary school education than I had. I just made up my mind that I thought about it, and I thought, well, I looked around and thought, these people are not so bright, I could do that. And, your narrow focus, almost with blinkers on, becomes much wider, and we can see things with education. It's not the romantic part of education, but it truly is. It's a great opportunity. And I was very lucky that I made up an idea. My plan was I'm going to get myself a whole lot of money, work as hard as I can, and I'm going to go off to did a BA, a little double major BA, so to speak, and then I did a law degree. And I worked in the blast furnace, in the most dangerous job in Newcastle for BHP. I worked 11 miles through the ground in the snowy mountains as a second-class tunneler.
That's the hard mahi I was referring to before.
Yes.
That is
well, I was
gritty, hard work.
Scaffolder and worked for, even as I was secondary school, in the breaks, worked for a drain layer. Learned some very practical things. And it's great,
You've got that background, so you can say that you know what hard work is like. I
just say to people, hold your hand vertical, downwards, and see how many veins there are. I'll tell you who's done some hard work in his life.
What do we think? Not yet?
A bit longer.
Yeah, a bit longer, a bit more gardening. You're talking about, being a boy from the far north. Was it Whananaki that you grew up in?
Whananaki.
Yeah. Being the boy from Whananaki who, from a family that went through a lot of hardship, just living day to day, going to boarding school, university.
I didn't go to boarding school, so the rest did.
The rest of them did.
3 of us missed out badly.
So going to university, though, how do you think you stacked up money-wise? Was that ever a comparison you made when you saw, richer families turn up at university? Mm-hmm. How did that sit with you?
Well, you just have to face the obvious. You know who some of those families are. You know they've been to private school. You know how wealthy they are. But it also sets your determination. Yeah, they might have all of that, but this is a long haul here, and all I've got to do is make sure I learn the environment, and learn valuable lessons that one needs to know, and the capacity for learning is a critical thing, and people can be taught that.
And that's what put your blinkers on.
Well, yes, but I also had the great fortune of running into some great men, some women, as a young student, and I saw the enormous advantages they had, but also that there were things to learn from their advantages. Not in an envious way, but how shall I say, I worked so darn hard to get into university. I wasn't going out at night and partying and all that sort of stuff. Too expensive.
You would have gone for a couple of beers here and there. No?
No. Rarely at all. Well, it's just you have a savings plan to get you through the year, and you got to make it work.
That's right. You can't blow it on a Friday night.
No, you can't.
Buying durries and pints.
But look, every holidays, no matter what the university holidays were, finish that day and next morning working for the whole holiday.
And that was probably rare. A lot of those richer families would have popped off back home.
Like I never went home for many, many Christmases at all because I was working.
What were you doing then?
freezing works, all sorts of jobs. I can ring up mother one time, and she said, "Where?" I said, "I'm Newcastle, Australia."
Do you think...
No, I wasn't. I was in the Snowy Mountains, yeah.
These jobs that you did, do you think that's helped you as a politician in terms of, people say you're a populist, you speak to the real middle
Well,
Kiwi.
who wants to be unpopular?
Well, that's right. It doesn't work for politics, does it?
You're running a radio station, you want to be unpopular? No. And like for politics, it's a statement of jealousy. Just because you can read the room and understand what people need and hope and aspire and dream for, doesn't make you a populist. But they've been calling me a populist all my career.
Just means you're switched on. But fast forward to now, you've just turned 80 in April. You're still working. Why is that? Because you're a big proponent of planning for retirement, aren't you? I mean,
Yes.
you're talking about savings. So why are you still working?
Well, I just left a business group about an hour ago, and I said to them, there's things happening where the economists and so many politicians are misreading it, that there's a massive future workforce, and you're laughing when I say that, but it's called old people. It's called people who would be working, most valuably working, if they could have a job, and they need to start thinking about it because, frankly, it's a bit like that Shawshank Redemption. Get busy living or get busy dying. And I say keep busy working or get busy dying. And so there's a huge population out there that nobody's factoring in all their stupid forward calculations. And the second thing is, put it this way, I don't want to be saying anything about people in an old people's home, but I can't conceive of saying when I wake up in the morning, now what am I going to do today? Oh, I think I'll go down and have coffee at 10:30 and I may be playing cards at 12 o'clock, maybe some petanque in the afternoon. I can't even dream of that. Look at the difference of that. I'm going to be on a plane to the Big Apple shortly. Not because I want to, but because I've got to. But there's something exciting to look forward to. And the thing that it's not a boast to the audience, two populations live longer, two professions in the populations worldwide, doesn't matter about the cultures, live longer than the other occupations. Guess what they are?
Tell me politicians, one of them.
Actors and politicians. Yes, why? They've got something in their diary urgently coming up all the time.
It keeps them busy.
Yes.
Gives them purpose.
Actors and politicians. The idea that you should just come to a certain age and want to retire now. Retire, why?
If you've got the skills, if you've got the drive, you've got the purpose,
Look,
why not?
I love fishing. I love working on boats. I love certain things. I know there's other things I'd love to do. But I kind of figure, I'll be there in 3 weeks or 3 months of doing that. We'll be bored witless. And so why not, get stuck in for what you're trying to do for your country. It's not easy, but it's worth a shot.
Are you a big property guy? Outside of your mining shack, obviously?
I had set my mind to be a serious capitalist when I was young. And, I had a very successful law practice, my own, and this law practice was making more in a month than the parliamentary salary for a year.
I bet.
Easily. And, I was going fine and everything else, but I kept on paying an interest to politics. This is right, this is wrong. And so in the end, yes, I was very much focused on that area of capitalism. But then one day I thought, hang on, there's something more wealthy than property, more wealthy than asset ownership. And it's a thing called life's experience. This is priceless. I'm a very lucky guy to have had the life I've had.
You've achieved a lot. I mean, you've been in and out of office a few times, but the travel you've done, the people you've met. I mean, you're talking about meeting prime ministers that are 100 years old. You've spent countless trips in New York and probably at the UN meeting incredible influential figures. Not many people get to do that.
Well, the greatest thing I could recommend to people listening is to read a poem by a famous man called Kipling called If. I recommend it to your audience. Sit there and quietly read it. It's about, and it's a great lesson. Never hold people in too greater esteem. Never put people down. Never keep your eyes on the prize. And the prize, of course, is being a serious adult. It's by the chauvinist because it's written about his advice to his son. And he finishes at the very end with this line, and what's more, you'll be a man, my son. But that advice could go for any young girl, any young woman. Don't let people become too important. I have never lined up overseas to shake hands with princes and prime ministers and presidents at all. Ask my staff, because in the end, you're living in the moment not to add to your acquaintance base, to add to your knowledge. And that's the key.
It's not about the black book.
No, it's not. I mean, I was 5 chapters into writing a book once, and I was persuaded by a publisher, and I was 5 chapters into writing a book, and all of a sudden had an epiphany, and said to my, you must be a darn idiot. You're meant to be living a book, not writing one. And this was 1988. Thank God I stopped.
5 chapters still sitting there, though?
Yeah.
You might find time to finish it.
My difficulty is, and they can't understand this, I've had conversations in part of my career with all sorts of people, but I expected, and they would have expected, that I would be confidential about those conversations. And I've seen so many people write books and they've not been confidential about it. They've used that information without warning to the people they were in consultation with to sort of flash up their book and make it popular. And I decided I'm never going to be that. And I came here to modestly live a book, but not to write one. And I'm never going to write one now.
I can tell you're a man of your word. Respect means a lot to you, right?
Well, it does. And I'm proud of that, yeah. Well, for all the difficulties, go and ask Helen Clark or Jim Bolger whether I can keep my word.
I bet I know the answer.
Yeah.
Is it, I mean, like I said, you're still going at 80. You're still, trucking
Why
along.
Why is everybody so amazed at that?
I am amazed because you are looking incredible for 80 and it is impressive and, it should be congratulated that you are still going because you want to do right by your country. What I was going to say, though, was, is it exhausting living such a public life as a politician with everything is transparent and discoverable? Does that get tiring at any point?
There's somebody I'd sort of understood from a long way away looking at this person. I call it the Michael Jackson syndrome. It's getting off the stage and all the proximity of people imploding upon you wanting things. And I was watching him and I thought, he loves being on the stage, but he can't stand getting off it because some people love to be admired and fan base and what have you. And I could see that he didn't.
People with books and movie deals. Yeah.
Well, they just love it. And that's the part that is the most difficult, and I don't think I'll ever get used to it because, how shall I say it, I just preferred sometimes to be in a crowd and be part of it rather than to be the central part of it. Can you understand me here?
No, absolutely. You like being you're one of us. You just
Well, I've gone to so many sort of political parties and functions, and there are people in politics that can't wait to get in the middle there. And I spent all my time thinking, no, I'm going to stand on the outside. Now I can learn a whole lot more.
Yeah.
I'm watching all these people.
That's it.
I'm watching every event developing in that little theatre, shaking hands and glad handing and hail fellow, well met, hail madam, well met. And I'm standing out thinking, I'm learning a whole lot more watching you than you watching me.
And perhaps those people in the middle are the flash in the pans that are gone the next election or the next whatever it happens to be.
There's no perhaps in that. They are. Well, 2 people I know were very different, and I thought they were very, very similar in that one context. One was David Longy, and one was Muldoon, with the same sort of things I believe I've got, and that they were miles apart in every other respect.
We spoke briefly before we started recording about the reason for the podcast. I'm a regular Kiwi who...
Where's my money?
Where's my money? We're all asking it, and I never claimed to be an expert about finance. I've got a fiance, 2 young kids, a dog. We bought our first house a few years ago. We sold it to upsize as our family grew. Interest rates went through the roof, and all of a sudden our bills were just coming out of our ears, and we hadn't necessarily done anything wrong. We thought we were doing everything right. I got a degree. I met someone I loved. We started a family. We bought a house, and we just thought we were living the Kiwi dream. And all of a sudden we're in the squeeze, and it feels like it's our fault, or is it someone else's fault? For the squeeze middle that I'm talking about, because it's not just me, there's countless thousands of families in that same position. What do you see as the single biggest financial pressure on those households right now?
Well, first of all, house prices in this country are massively inflated. Politicians don't like saying that, because if they do, then those people who say one thing but are relying upon property asset increases will say one thing, but they think privately another thing, and they vote on it. But here's the reality. As a young lawyer, I was handling a stack of property purchases for a number of building companies, and I can remember all their names now, where we would be calculating the buyer's capacity of buying that house, because the house was only 3.5 to 4 times max their annual income.
Yeah.
Now it's sometimes 9, 10, 11. And second, that they would be able to do this with 25% of their weekly wages, pay for the rates insurance and pay for the mortgage costs. And at a stretch, if they capitalise their family benefit, they could go a bit higher.
Yep.
But no more than 30%. Now people are 62, 65, a worse percentage. So this
I think at one point we were mid-50s.
Yes, well, that there you are. Now, the difficulty is that if you were to advocate a policy of downsizing house values by 30, 40, 50%, then a massive majority would have no equity. They'd be in serious debt now.
That's right.
And here's your irony and paradox you've got. You talk about interest rises. You don't know what interest rises look like. I can recall when interest rates were paying sometimes mortgages up to 7%, where the overnight rate of New Zealand in terms of the interest rates, the overnight rate went past 1,100% 3 times under Rogernomics. This is dramatic stuff. But you're living in the here and now. And as a consequence, the problem we've got at the moment, there's a misconfiguration. The volume of money is in the economy, but so much of it is going to the wrong places. And then there are aspects of our survivorship, which I think, sadly, and I'm part of the government, we're not handling as nearly as well as we should. It is this. We've got to increase the volume of money in the economy, but massively increase the volume that's focused on wealth creation, asset and infrastructure building, and exports, and giving everything that makes money the backing we possibly can, not consumption. And here we are, and still far too much of the country's national expenditure, GDP, is based on consumption. And having inherited massive debt regime from the previous administration who spent money like that was going out of fashion, we're paying a massive price for it. If this is confusing for your audience, it's not because I'm ducking the issue. I'm saying that there are ways out of this, but this last quarter, believe me, is the bottom. It has come slowly. It's been almost 2 years since we become the government, or 22 months. It could have been turned around much more immediately, but there are lessons that people in government are hopefully learning as I speak to ensure that the pathway forward is better. Now, there are aspects of this conversation I'd love to tell you about, but because they're in the pipeline and unannounced, I can't really say. But number one thing I'm saying to you is this country needs to understand that it's much harder to start a new business than it is to keep an existing one going. And we're going to have to, and we should have done, far more about keeping existing businesses going. If a business is going, try and keep it going if you possibly can. Because when there is a recovery, they're all in situ ready to make a profit. I'm seeing timber companies, I'm seeing closures around this country, and I'm saying this is awful. We should have handled their energy costs, which is a major matter. Mm-hmm. We should be handling their actual costs of finance. This is a major matter. Can we transition them over the next 2 years? Yes, we should, and we should have had policies to match that. Now, that sounds like interventionism. I don't get a damn what it sounds like. It sounds like nationalism, patriotism, and I'm seeing it work in other countries, like Singapore, like Croatia.
It sounds like saving jobs and saving livelihoods and saving businesses.
And that's the point, yes. That's the point.
People love to blame the government, don't they? Particularly on social media when they can just say what they want and fire it off into the ether.
Well, guess what? Sometimes they're right.
Sometimes they are right. And whether it's the current one or the previous one or a combination of the last 10, you're a common sense guy. Where does personal responsibility come into it?
Well, personal responsibility is huge, and that's one of the problems. Everybody here in this country is talking about rights, but nobody's talking about responsibilities anymore. Well, I'm wrong about that, but far too many people yelling out rights are claiming things that don't even exist. They say, I've got the right to buy a home, I've got the right to do this, the right to do that, and the answer is, well, your parents never had it, your grandparents never had it in the halcyon days of our great rise. So why do you think you've got the right? No, you've got to earn it. You've got to save for it. Now, the government's job is to not get in your way, is to ensure that you're saving for something that is affordable. Is it possible for house buying to be 3 or 4 times our country's wages or incomes? Yes, it is. But not because you drive house prices down. We've got to drive wages up, truly. And I'm saying to my colleagues now, you don't get it. Drive the wages up, cut the taxation of a business that are paying the wages, and start focusing on not consumption, but wealth creation, and it'll work.
You're big on wealth creation. You're big on KiwiSaver. You've suggested 10% mandatory KiwiSaver contributions further down the line.
Well, they can all laugh at me, but I'm telling you what, it's going to be inevitable, and we're going to find a pathway to do that.
Well, we're way behind other countries in terms of retirement savings, aren't we?
Tragically.
Yeah.
We listen to a whole lot of theorists and ideologues, and the tragedy in New Zealand is the so-called parties of the right, the Conservatives, have been anti-savings. They're a perverted bunch. Where in the world will you find the right against savings? Except in New Zealand.
With KiwiSaver, was that just a rebrand of a super thing or of super in general, or was KiwiSaver meant to be this save? Because obviously we can use it for retirement.
Well, I'm saying there it is now, but it's got, for the first time, people who are signed up to it not actually saving. So there's a figment of its success. There are millions in it. And what we're saying is, but this problem is we should all be in it. And it should go further than that. I'm a housewife. Maybe I'm not in the workforce. But when I go to the supermarket, a proportion of my spending should be going to my own savings. See how we get this? This is not an add-on tax. It just makes common sense.
Because as it stands, any financial advisor would tell a customer or a client, KiwiSaver is not going to be enough as it stands for your retirement. You need something else. You've got to have property or shares or something, because KiwiSaver, as it stands for people, is not going to be enough based on what they're contributing now, threes and fours.
But just roll that back a fraction. We've got a super policy, and that is at age 65, and if you're alive and you're in New Zealand and you've worked here for so many years, you're entitled to full super. It's not means tested. This is about max 5.2% of our GDP, or half the problem other nations have with their retirement numbers. And we've got all these people saying it should be means tested, it should be this, it should be that, and the age should be increased. All these people are expressing a lousy excuse for, guess what? Their massive failure to run the economy properly. Why don't they focus on their own shortcomings? If they'd run the economy successfully, we would not have been worrying about all of it. We'd have spent more money on the other end of the spectrum, which is, I think, we should have always done. It's our young, all those under 18 years of age, more money on them, because that is the future.
Investing in the kids, investing in education, making sure we're actually creating Kiwis that are worthy of putting it into the world. Despite
our failings in the education system, we've still got some marvellous successes. For example, when it comes to gaming, we're world leading. So why haven't we incentivised our young people to stay here and stay in the gaming game here, not heading off to Aussie again? I'm saying to people, we can turn this economy around, but you've been grievously misled, because in the last campaign, political parties were getting up and saying to you, I can fix it, and they were never telling you how bad it was. That's a tragedy.
How bad is it?
Well, it's much worse than that we were told, and that's why we're probably at the bottom edge of it now, and it's taken far longer than turn it around. But people were making promises, and they clearly didn't understand how bad things were. Now, it's not the level of debt. It's the fact that so much of our debt has been on wasted consumption. If that debt was all on wealth creation, export growth, and infrastructure essentialities that would be around for 50 and 100 years from now, it would be working for us. It's not the level of debt. It's where it's misplaced and where it's been misspent.
That's a good... it's the angle that no one's talking about. We just assume the debt's there because it's there, but why is it there?
Yeah. But, I want to tell the New Zealanders, look, they can all say this. They'll come out and they'll give you a vowel sandwich for everything they say. The more vowels they've got in their language, the more you're going to be persuaded. They'll wave their arms around like an Italian waiter trying to tell you what the next part of the menu is. And they'll roll their eyes like they are looking genuine. Have a good hard look at their body language. They're talking bull dust. It's time for realism now, and you're listening to it.
What would you say to a Kiwi who is living paycheck to paycheck right now? They've got bugger all savings, their rent or their mortgage is going up. Food inflation, although it's starting to maybe settle, has been high for a long time. Filling up the car is still expensive. What do you say to them?
Well, I understand. Why do I understand? Because I've lived through it. All I'm saying is, I believe there's a chance to turn this country around. I believe there's a chance to turn it around dramatically. Not overnight, but stage by stage it'll get better and better and better. And curiously, in a most troubled world since in my lifetime, nevertheless, There's a lot of money out there finding fewer places to be invested. And we could make one of those countries, New Zealand. And we need to answer the question, why New Zealand? And we need to answer that question rapidly. And I hope before too long we'll give you a pronounced answer. But not, I'm saying for my coalition colleagues, I hope to give you the answer myself.
Winston Peters, equal parts politician, provocateur, and professional comeback artist. Love him or not, he's one of the few who can still make New Zealand politics kind of entertaining. And that's saying something. 12 months out from an election. If you enjoyed this chat, hit follow and share Where's My Money with a mate who reckons they could do a better job running the country. Don't forget, you can follow us on Instagram for more money tips and snips from my chats. Plus, full video episodes are available on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Reagan, and I'll see you next time where I just may be asking someone else from the Beehive that big old question, where's my money? Huge thanks to Enable Me for sponsoring this episode of Where's My Money. Navigating finances can be tricky. Take control of your finances and break the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. Get tips and insights on budgeting, managing debt, and saving money with Enable Me, helping Kiwis get money fit.